Ourselves in, I would give you a little state of the parish address rather than just a written report, because we have been so disconnected from one another over the course of nearly a year. Who would have thought last year at our annual meeting that I would be standing in the pulpit giving you an annual meeting address with a mask here on one side and a bunch of new video equipment installed in our church so that we could, for the majority of the past year, stream video service into your own homes so that we could keep people safe. Over the course of the last 10 or 11 months, we have experienced great challenge as a culture of people, a community of people, as the global village, but also considerable challenge just as a church, trying to stay connected to one another. And I wanted to address just several topics that we've experienced over the course of the last year, so that you could have a sense of where we find the state of our parish right now, 2021, most way, hopefully, through this pandemic. There have been so many challenges that we've faced both together and separately, and the overriding question that has been in my mind, which causes me to step into the pulpit today and address you like this, is the question, are we okay? Did we survive this past year okay? How are we feeling about the year ahead? What are our plans for the present future of St. John's Episcopal Church? I would say two things in regard to our present future. The first is, it is our plan to finish this pandemic cautiously. We are looking toward the health of our community, and that will be the yardstick upon which we measure all the decisions that we make going forward, whether that's to reinstitute program during the season of Lent, or to repopulate live church in some way, probably from behind a mask and somewhat socially distanced. It is my expectation that over the course of the winter time and perhaps through the spring, we would slowly be able to reconnect with one another face to face in the physical presence of one another. I should say face to face, at least from the middle of the nose up. But the situation is dynamic, and so we struggle to know exactly when that could happen. I do want to put a date on your calendar, though, and this is a little optimistic, but I think optimism is called for. June 13th, 2021, Sunday, June 13th, 2021, following the 10 a.m. service, it's our plan, it's our hope, maybe even a dream, to have a big St. John's family reunion. We hope that at that point in time, enough people will be vaccinated or recovered from COVID, and it will be safe for us to get together. Our plan is to share some food, to be able to enjoy one another's company, to listen to some wonderful live music. So I'm asking you, if there's any way you can be a part of that family reunion, and it's safe for you to do so, to put that on your calendar. June 13th, Sunday, June 13th, following the 10 a.m. service. Now I want to spend a little bit of time giving you an annual report based upon the way that we executed ministry and mission over the course of last year. First thing that I would say is that you have witnessed some leadership change. We've had some staffing change, and I want to make you aware of leadership. We said goodbye to a beloved member of our congregation, David Wagner, and we adjusted the way that we populate and lead the music program here, bringing on Ron Fabry full-time as our parish organist and choir master. Of course, there's no real choir back yet, but you can hear Ron and see Ron in this place on Sundays, playing the organ and playing the piano, accompanying and leading the music in our worship. And Ron has been a wonderful addition to our staff. He's fit right in with his commitment to excellence, but also his good humor. One thing that I communicate to the staff from time to time is like, hey, remember. And I would say this to parishioners too. Remember, we're serious about what we do, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. And Ron fits right in. It's also been a real blessing to add a third priest, to welcome Mary Erickson back to our staff as a full-time member of the clergy. It's a bit of an experiment for us to bring this third priest on, but we have high ambitions for the way that we can involve each of us in this clergy role, the way that we can collaborate one with another and expand our ministry and mission. These areas of expansion as they relate to Mary's job description, principally, I would say, relate to our involvement in the creation of a relationship or deeper mission with the Wind River Indian Reservation. So many of us have a strong desire to see our community serve that constituency of people, to have that constituency of people educate us and help us to become more knowledgeable about their very real experience. And this is a big part of what Mary's job, Mary's role is here in our congregation. There are a couple other pieces that I think are important. One of the things you may have witnessed during our worship during this pandemic is if you were tuning in early on in the pandemic to our virtual worship, you saw Brian and Mary and me back away from a traditional sermon, a traditional monologue, and create a space for conversation. We did that in hopes that we could recreate some intimacy that we were all hungry for and missing. Now, I can tell you right from the get-go, some of you loved that, and others of you hated it. We're not going to preach like that every Sunday here at the 8 o'clock or the 10 a.m. service, but we do hope to begin to curate conversations between the three of us, and when it's appropriate, bringing in another voice or other voices into those conversations, talking about how we embody the Christian faith in the world today, in the present future. That's another way, another voice to that crowd, and one that was missing. The female voice that was missing from our pulpit is now here full time, and I'm so grateful for that. And then another little piece that we've been working on, which we won't be able to accomplish until this pandemic ends, is the creation of some third worship service here at St. John's, a worship service that would reach out to a constituency of people who wouldn't otherwise darken the door of one of our traditional services. All of us know that Jackson is full of that population of spiritual but not religious or spiritually curious people. And we have a deep desire to establish a connection and a community of those people, not just because we feel as though we have something to offer to them, but also we know that we have a lot to learn from that community. And if we think about expanding our ministry in that way, I know that God will continue to be active and present and bring us new and interesting voices and hearts. When it comes to vestry and endowment committee that you will vote for in our annual meeting on Sunday morning, you'll see that the ballot is made up of folks who have been serving on vestry or serving in the endowment committee and are carrying over to a second term. Because of some adjustments that we had to make during the rector transition meeting, we don't have open spots in those places right now. And it's quite helpful for us as a community of leaders to have people fulfill a second term of ministry. Anyone who's been on vestry before knows that it takes a year or so to become fluent in both the workflow and the language and the governance of vestry in the Episcopal Church. So I'm grateful to those leaders who have said, sure, we are willing to serve a second term. So this is the slate of leaders that we will be electing this year in our annual meeting. And you can see those in the annual report. There's a little piece about who those characters are. Now moving into this area of where I feel like we've experienced some failure and some struggle over the course of the last year, particularly as it relates to the pandemic. The thing that keeps me up at night, and this may come as some surprise to you, maybe not, but the thing that keeps me up at night is I feel as though during this time of being separated, we've lost touch with some of you, with some of the people who are at the center of our congregation. Because we don't see each other in Hanson Hall for coffee hour, or we don't pass by each other in the narthex and catch up with just a sentence or two, I feel like we've missed some opportunities to care for our community, for you, for us, for the home team, for the St. John's family, and that's distressing. I know that the logistics have been such that it has prevented us from communicating very well in that regard, and so that's distressing. So I would count that as a failure of this year. Like, we've lost some pastoral touch that we had in this place prior to pandemic. It is my sincere hope that this is a failure that we can correct in 2021 and that we can reconnect and reconvene into a family that shares trust and intimacy and care. You also know, or perhaps you don't, we had a big revival planned for September. We had several compelling, committed speakers and preachers who were coming our way, including Michael Curry, our own presiding bishop. And of course, we were forced to cancel that event, and that's quite frustrating. Another thing that's had to get put on hold again, which I would count a failure, is our reconstruction project of Browsenby. It was my great hope that we would have a sense of design for that place a year ago, and that last summer we would begin the project of raising financial commitments for that rebuild. That project just keeps getting pushed off. It's our sincere hope that that's a project that we can pick up this summer, because Browsenby is a tool for serving this community in such a comprehensive and meaningful way, not just with the provision of low-cost, high-quality clothing and housewares for our working community, but also in the revenue that it generates and washes back into our church budget that we can then share out through our work in mission and love spreading here at St. John's. So it's my sincere hope that this project will not be postponed a second longer. Those are kind of the ground floor loss that I see that we've experienced over 2020. There's one that's sort of higher level. It's something that I talk to with vestry and staff about from time to time. But the work that we have in front of us as a church is to make this transition, and this is a hard transition for communities to make, but to make this transition from being a staff-driven entity to being a people-driven entity. What we know is that you have more and better ideas about how we can spread love and serve this community than we can conjure up as a staff sitting in a staff meeting on Tuesday morning. And so we've been working hard over the course of the last few years to shift the way that we work and the way that we connect and communicate one with another so that we can expand our ministry at kind of a high and strategic level. Of course, that's just gone to the birds this year. We have retreated back into, because of being careful and wanting to be respectful of people's physical health and safety, we've retreated back to a model of being a staff-driven church, and I count that as a struggle or a failure. Where have we experienced success? What are we proud of? What work are we proud of that we have done this year in our community? There are more than a few things. The first thing that I would say is that we can all feel good that we find ourselves connected to, immersed in, serving a church community that passionately and competently serves the needs of the community in which it finds itself nesting. Our church has so lovingly served the community of Jackson, especially those who have been negatively affected by the economic downturn that we've all experienced during this pandemic. The range of service is vast. It extends from partnering with 122, the only crisis intervention social service agency in our valley, to provide over $100,000 of financial resource and support. We were challenged by one of our St. John's family members to match $100,000, which we did match, and we have extended ourselves well beyond that during this time. That's an incredibly powerful gift. It ranges from very practical, tangible, money-raising experiences all the way over here to the side of like, what can we do for kids during the summer who've faced this pandemic? Maybe we could give away ice cream. Maybe you've seen the stories of St. John's Episcopal Church and the Presbyterian Church of Jackson Hole teaming up to provide free ice cream to kids and kids at heart all across the community during the summertime. We have provided meals for all of the grocery workers in our community during this time in partnership with Cafe Genevieve. There have been so many ways that you have so lovingly and so generously supported this community of Jackson Hole during this pandemic, and that is a sign of our health and our faith, and I am grateful. Another success of the year is our service well beyond Teton County. In the early spring, a family, members of our St. John's family reached out to me and said, "Hey, Jimmy, I see this work that we're doing here in Teton County, and I'm so grateful for it. I wonder what it would be like for us to imagine service outside of Teton County and raising financial resource for that." Up popped another commitment of $100,000 that went to the Episcopal Foundation of the Diocese of Wyoming, and partners from all over the state added to that resource of money that was spent outside of Teton County, Wyoming. A good portion of that investment went to serve the Wind River Indian Reservation. It's so inspiring that in our church family we have people who are interested in helping and serving those who are around our valley and those who are well beyond it. We have innovated. We didn't really have a choice, but we have innovated. For a long period of time, we had over here on the altar an iPhone with a plug-in speaker and a crazy little tripod where we broadcast church to you for weeks and weeks on end. And then we innovated right here behind me by setting up a tent in the summertime when we were able to get together safely outside from behind a mask. And we continue to broadcast our service online. If you had the site that I have, what you would see right now is a beautiful video booth that is in the back of our church, so that while we are in this pandemic and after we come out of this pandemic, we can continue to broadcast the good worship and the good teaching that happens in this place far beyond the time limits of a Sunday morning and far beyond the region of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So I feel good about what we've been able to do as far as innovation. Surely there are always other things that we can do, but we've been quite taxed during this time, and I'm proud of our accomplishments there. And finally, the last thing that I would say, and you of course will read this in the report, is that we've been able to occupy a place of financial stability that feels near miraculous. Over the course of the last 3 years, we have made some incredible steps in building back general reserves that had been depleted. I think maybe all of you remember last year coming into this experience, we had a surprise repair. We had to replace the roof of this place to the tune of $250,000. And at the end of the year last year, with our budgeted resources that we had saved over the last few years and the additional income that was unexpected to us, we were able to completely pay off that roofing project in 2020. A wonderful, wonderful miracle. We find ourselves sitting in an experience that feels very familiar this year. We have finished the year so strongly. Of course, we have had the help of PPP, that Paycheck Preservation Program that the federal government gave in support of the nonprofit and for-profit community. That's been especially helpful with Bright Beginnings, our preschool that's been shut down, and also Browse and Buy that experienced a period of shutdown for the safety of our community, and then has had restricted reopening up until the present day. And so grateful for that kind of support, but we also sit in this very strong position. I know that this last piece of debt that we carry, maybe this is just something that occupies my mind and those who are on the finance committee and those who are on the vestry, but we carry over some debt from this condo that we purchased several years ago in support of the Chapel of the Transfiguration, the place where we house those chaplains. I am optimistic that we will at least reduce that debt by half, and I continue to feel pretty optimistic that we will wipe that debt out this year. It was always something in the back of my mind that I thought, well, when the chapel turns 100 in 2025, we'll raise some extra resource to support the chapel and we'll eliminate that debt at this time. But our situation is strong enough that I feel confident that we will be able to do something significant in that regard as well. Couple of more areas of work to address with you, and thank you for staying with me. I know I'm talking an awful lot here, and we don't have a chance to pause and respond to questions in this format. But a thing that's in the present part of my mind as being at the top of the pyramid here in a moral leader in our community, which we know St. John's Episcopal Church is. It's how do we heal these moral wounds in our culture? And we sought to address that over last year, and we will continue to address it in the year ahead. But we are paying careful attention to racial reconciliation. How is it that we go about supporting nurture and healing across the racial divide that we experience in America? And also, how do we embody a moral leadership presence in the current social political divide that we feel in our community? How can we begin to re-engage a conversation? And you've seen some starts and stops with that over the course of the last year. And it's truly my hope that we can carefully and intentionally address those topics in the year ahead. In my mind, it looks something like this. We borrow from our past, our recent past, Mary's words that became St. John's words, that became Jackson Hole's words. We borrow from our past this concept of civility, compassion, and love. That's how we reach out to our neighbor. That's how we reach out to the other with whom we find disagreement. And in my mind, what does that look like? It looks something like a program that I've been calling just privately, somewhat privately, Love Like a Local. How can we devote ourselves over the course of the next year to love like a local, to fully embody the faith here in Jackson, to be energized by God's outrageously beautiful work in our context so that we can push more love, more reconciliation, more healing, and more nurture back into the lives of those who populate our valley. Hope for the months ahead. If you were sitting in this church on my first day at St. John's Episcopal Church, or my first day in the pulpit at St. John's Episcopal Church, you heard me toss out a line to express some hope, to perhaps cast a vision. I said on that day, and I've said many times from this place before, that the work that we have before us is to cover this valley with love like snow covers it in the wintertime. It's a bold vision. I can tell you that it is a vision and a mission that translates to non-pandemic times and also translates to pandemic times. That has been some guiding ballast for me and some of our leadership over the course of the last year. I expect that it will carry on for years ahead. We are committed to plowing ahead with the work of spreading love and making a difference in times of crisis and in times that are absent crisis. So that has been a wonderful undergirding for us, helping us honor God through the care of others and the care of ourselves. I'm going to share with you 3 verses from the Bible that have been following me around for the last 11 months or so. The first is from Luke's gospel, and it comes from the mouth of Jesus when the disciples are experiencing anxiety and upset in a time of transition and a time of power being transferred from one place to another and back and forth. Jesus said to his disciples, "Fear not, little flock. Fear not, little flock. For it is your Father's good will to give you the kingdom." I say that almost every day to myself, and I'm saying it to you this morning. We are in the hand of a wholly devoted, unfailingly competent God who has our very best interest at heart. We are covered and strong even in the midst of crisis. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good will to give you the kingdom, is the first of 3 verses that have been guiding me over the course of these last 11 months. The second comes from the Hebrew Scriptures, and it's in this exchange that we actually had in church a few weeks ago, but it's one that I've been toiling with for quite some time now. It comes from 1 Samuel, and it happens when there's some confusion from Samuel. Is Eli calling me, or who's calling me? Who's waking me up in the middle of the night? And Eli, the high priest, gives Samuel, the understudy, some direction. He says, go back to bed, and when you hear the voice calling again, I want you to respond, "Speak, Lord. Your servant is listening." Speak, Lord. Your servant is listening. I can tell you over the course of the last year or so, we have experienced so much confusion, so much uncertainty, a big measure of frustration. And I have adopted in my own life that when I find myself stuck in that place of confusion and anxiety and frustration, I simply respond, "Speak, Lord. Your servant is listening," trying to reorient myself to the goodness that I know is always flowing from God's hearts to our own. There is one more line of scripture that I want to share with you in this address. And it's one that has stuck with me for the majority of my ordained life. Some of you might know the story of Moses and Joshua sitting atop Mount Nebo overlooking the land of promise. Moses having some sense that it will not be he who leads Israel into that place, but it will be someone else, that it's not his job, his calling. And we hear almost immediately Israel erupts in fear and anxiety. No way we can go down there. Look at those giants that are occupying that land. It will be an unsuccessful campaign. We'll be driven out. There's no way we have an opportunity for success. And then you hear that voice of Moses' lieutenant Joshua step up, and he gives that long soliloquy there. And then he says to the people at the end there, trying to call them into action, into trusting God, and to moving out into the promised land, into that land of milk and honey. He says, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." I don't know about you. I don't know about y'all. I can't say anything about these people right here, but I can tell you, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And that's been a wonderful reorienting verse for me over the course of this confusing and hard times. Of like, yeah, this is tough. No, we face real uncertainty in the work that's before us and how we might be able to accomplish it. But we re-energize and rededicate ourselves to the mission by remembering Joshua's words, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Church, I can tell you that that has been true of you. Each time that you have been invited to step up into deeper service, even in the face of frustration and confusion, you have done so. And I am so very grateful for your faith and your commitment. And I would ask that we redouble our efforts so that in 2021, we spread more love and make a bigger difference in a way that last year would have seemed unimaginable. Thank you for taking this time to listen to me. Thank you for embodying the faith in such a beautiful way. I look forward to seeing you all over Zoom at our annual meeting at this Sunday, January 31st at 8:30 a.m. There's a Zoom link in your email box or on our website. But what I most look forward to is the opportunity to reconnect with you face to face and join you arm in arm in this work of making a love-spreading difference here in our valley and beyond. Thank you, church. Thank you.